So here it is, guys, week 2 of our brand new series, Recession Proof Your Life. It's taken by our very own senior leader, Mark Pomeroy.
Well, hey there, Elevate family and friends. Great to have you with us today for week 2 of our brand new series, Recession Proof Your Life. Now, this is a series talking about how we can learn how to better manage our finances and, in fact, learn God's principles in how to manage our finances. And actually, we teach every year a dedicated series around godly principles for managing our finances, because it's something that's common for every one of us, finances, whatever way, shape, or form, state that we're in. And we all have the opportunity to get wiser and better and more effective. We normally teach it April, May, and yet this year I really felt to bring it forward because maybe you've been feeling it. Certainly you read the media, you see it, that we're very much on a financial roller coaster in our economy here in Australia and in many countries around the world. You know, interest rates on home loans are increasing, rental prices are increasing, and the general cost of living is increasing. In fact, just last month, Valentine's Day, it inspired this meme here. Yep, impress her with something expensive, a frozen chicken. And of course, he could have just as easily been holding a dozen eggs or a can of petrol, because all of these things have been going up. And one of the downsides of that isn't just the dollars and cents, the bank accounts, the bank balances. It's also our inner world that can be affected. You know, being dominated by stress and worry. And yet our contention is that it is actually possible to experience freedom and peace when it relates to our finances, even when we're riding a financial roller coaster. Now, so therefore we launched last week. I unpacked the problem that many people face in Australia and again, many countries around the world. And the beginning of the solution is to put God first, not put Amazon first, put God first. And so you can go back and watch that on this channel, or you can grab our podcast, just search Elevate Church Perth on any of the major podcast platforms and catch that up, because that's really the jump off point. And this being week 2 will make more sense having got your head around week 1. But today, week 2, I want to talk about paying off debt. We live in a culture that has normalized debt, that it just kind of sends the signal, everyone's got it, everyone's doing it. And the inference is, therefore, it must be okay. The reality is, with debt and with anything that is less than God's best, just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's ideal. But, you know, it's a pretty typical scenario. If you want to buy something and you don't have the money, you kind of, shake your fist in the air. Nobody tells me what I can and can't buy. And you reach for the credit card. Bam, done, got it. Or if your credit card or cards is maxed out, then no problem. I'm just going to apply for a personal loan and bam, I can buy the thing. Well, I don't have the money, but I've got access to someone's money, so I'll use their money and I'll buy the thing. Well, if your credit cards are maxed out and the bank says no to a new personal loan, well, guess what? There's a more recent solution, buy now, pay later, where you can just go on the website or go into the store, and again, you can buy the thing with someone else's money, and you get the thing, and you say, I told you no one gets to tell me what I can and cannot buy. Yeah, okay, well, that's one thing, but here's the reality. Credit card debt per household in Australia. Average is $3,841. Personal loan debt in Australia, average household is $17,700. And 46% of households in Australia have buy now, pay later debt. This is not good, people. This is not ideal. And in fact, to the point where some people have amounts like this or even greater, and they're in over their heads and they can't figure a way out of it. We have a choice as Jesus followers. We have a choice when anything in our prevailing culture doesn't intersect with kingdom culture. In fact, a model that I have in my brain that I find enormously helpful to sift and sort is this, just a simple Venn diagram where there are some things in our prevailing culture that actually overlap with kingdom culture. You know, when there's a crisis or an emergency somewhere around the world and people go in to help or send money to help, that's something that happens quite regularly in our prevailing culture, and it would be something that would be greenlit in kingdom culture. Having said that, not everything overlaps, not everything intersects. And so whenever there's something that is in our prevailing culture that doesn't overlap with kingdom culture, we have a choice to make. And I would say that allowing debt to be normalized in your life is something that is tolerated at best and encouraged at worst in our prevailing culture, but is absolutely not something that gets greenlit through the lens of kingdom culture. I mean, still not convinced? Okay, let me show you this. Just last week, when we taught week 1 of this series, one of our team came up to me and said, let me tell you this story that just happened this week with our 8-year-old. We were getting ready for dinner, gathering around the table, and our 8-year-old had just been playing a game on their iPad, and it's a game that is like you sort of like have a house and you kind of start to furnish it and build it out. You know, a bit of like a homemaker's game. Sounds wildly innocent, and mum and dad thought, you know, great, like what a nice game. Well, 8-year-old says to mum and dad, yeah, so I've got my credit card. I just got my first credit card in the game, and I'm going around and I'm buying lots of stuff on my credit card. And mum and dad are like, wait, what? The game developer baked a credit card in to a game aimed at 8-year-olds, and I don't know. I mean, the game developer doesn't actually, it's not like a real credit card. It's not like they make money from it. But I just wonder, is like, who thought that was a good idea? An 8-year-old is playing the game innocently and is now essentially being fed the idea that this is how you're meant to live, aged 8. Now, when it comes to finances, we're all on a journey, but we're not at the same place on the journey as other people. In fact, last week I outlined 3 categories. The behind category, where you are in over your head, you can't keep up with payments, and it's all stressful to you. There's the caught up. You're reducing and eliminating debt. You're making timely payments, and you're starting to kind of get a sense of peace emerging. And then there's the ahead category, which you've got no debt, you're excited about your financial future. And if you're in the behind or the caught up category, I want to really double click on the reality that there is hope for you to move forward because there's a better way. That it's actually possible to make forward process, and we're leaning into that throughout this series. And I started last week with opening up a cheat code for life and a cheat code for our finances, something that God said through his spokesperson, Jeremiah. Let me read it to you. This is what the Lord says. Stop at the crossroads and look around. Ask for the old godly way and walk in it. Travel its path and you will find rest for your souls. You know, God's highlighting the reality that when it comes to managing our finances, there's options. And we can do what everyone else is doing, or we can look for the old godly ways. And see, wisdom isn't looking around at our prevailing culture and asking what is everyone else is doing and then just copy that when they're not doing kingdom culture stuff. It's actually saying, what's the best way? What's the wisest way? What's the old godly way? The way that's been working for thousands of years. And this is where some people go wrong. You know, they dismiss the old godly ways as being irrelevant today. I mean, you know, come on, those people didn't have to deal with the big greedy banks hiking up interest rates and stealing your money. They didn't have the temptation of getting onto your computer or your smartphone and in Amazon Prime, one-day delivery is just a click away. No, they didn't, but they still had challenges. And the fact of the matter is that countless people over thousands of years have been looking for, finding, and implementing old godly ways with their finances. And guess what? Ultimately experiencing the promises that God has for us if we choose to go down that path. Now, some of you are those people, and I love that. Some of you know those people, and I would encourage you to be inspired by them. And some of you, therefore, have the opportunity to become those people, to move forward from behind to caught up, from caught up to ahead. And that's why we're teaching this series, and hopefully you can look back and, in the words of Ashley and Martin, say, that was my turning point. Now, if the stats on credit cards and personal loans and buy now, pay later debt didn't get your attention, let me share something that Solomon wrote. So if you've got your smartphone, you scan this flow code. It's going to take you to Proverbs chapter 22. Now, Solomon was the second king of Israel, considered to be the wisest person that ever lived and the richest person that ever lived. And he wrote these wisdom sayings, which are now gathered together and collected in a collection called the Book of Proverbs. I already quoted two of them last week. Let me show you another one today that is incredibly sobering. You ready? Buckle up. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Now, I pretty much quote this exact same slice of wisdom from Solomon every single year when we teach on managing finances. And I'm kind of aware that when we go past the word slave, that potentially some people are like, oh, come on, Solomon, that's a little strong. Slave, really? And if you think it's a little strong, then I just put out this little bit of homework. Try this. Try this at home, people. Don't try this at home. Try this at home, just to test whether or not Solomon knew what he was talking about. If you have credit card debt and or personal loan debt, just stop making your payments. Like, as of today, just if you want to find out, I'm not recommending this. I'm recommending that if you want to find out whether Solomon was right in using the word slave or whether he was just being a bit hyperbolic, then what you could do is stop making your payments for a month, maybe try to go 2 months. And you will quickly discover the nature of the relationship that you've entered into with the lender. See, the lender, they get to tell you how much to repay, when to repay, how to repay, and what the consequences will be if you choose not to meet those criteria. They will tell you that. And like a slave, you have no options. You are now in a completely subservient relationship with the lender because you bought stuff using their money. That stuff might be sitting in your house, but it doesn't belong to you until you pay the lender back with interest. Now, we're not trying to be a big wet blanket here teaching this, or don't ever buy anything, just, take care of your basic needs. Don't ever buy anything that you want. Not advocating that at all. In fact, that sounds a little bit miserable. But here are some wisdom principles that are vital for us to understand. Firstly, be clear between needs and wants. When you look at an item, be clear, be honest, just be honest. Is this a need or a want? If it's a want, it doesn't mean you don't buy it, but just start with, yes, it's a want. And if you don't define what's a need and what's a want, guess what? Our prevailing culture will define it for you. I was just this morning watching a commercial for a new pickup truck brand that's entered the market that has got this gigantic engine. It's known for being this super brutish engine. And one mate says to his mate, who's just bought one, "Did you really need an engine that powerful?" And he's, "Oh, hop in, mate." Now they use the word need. Did you need an engine that powerful? You'd expect that his mate hops in and they go in this pickup truck and they go hauling some gigantic, massive, heavy payload up a mountain for hundreds of kilometers. No, they just went around the corner, through a park, and came home. They use the word need in it. No, that's a want. Now, you can still buy it, but it's a want. Okay? Okay. When you've defined for yourself the clear distinction between a need and a want, and you start to look at the want category, wisdom would encourage you to define enough. Like, what's enough? When do I have enough of that, of those? Because again, if you don't define your enough, our prevailing culture will define it for you. Let me say it again. I'm not suggesting that we don't ever buy wants, but here's an important distinction. If you don't have the money for it and you still want it, wisdom suggests keep saving until you have the money and then pull the trigger and buy it. Two of our team members, which actually you're going to hear from in just a few minutes, so stick around for that, they have a saying between the two of them, budget says no. I'd like to buy that. Yeah, okay, wait, no, budget says no. Or, okay, sure, budget says yes. I'm going to come back to the B word in a minute. But here's the great news, and I said it before, I'm going to say it again. There is hope because there's a better way, there's a pathway for you to move forward when it comes to your personal financial world. And our go-to, it's not the only go-to that exists, but our go-to, someone in a strategy that we use and recommend and that a growing number of our people have adopted is the baby steps approach popularized by Dave Ramsey. Now, Dave Ramsey is like a financial guru, financial coaching guru, and you can find these baby steps at one of his websites, ramseysolutions.com. There's 7 baby steps. I'm not going to unpack all 7 here today. Go to that website, ramseysolutions.com, see it for yourself. I just want to quickly fly over the first 2 of the 7. And they simply are this. If you're in debt, okay, credit card, I'm talking consumer debt, not home loan. We'll come back to that next week probably. But consumer debt, credit cards, personal loan, buy now, pay later, the things I talked about earlier. And you want to get out of that. Not everyone does, but let's hope you're getting an appetite for getting out from under that debt. Baby step number 1, save $1,000 for your starter emergency fund. I'll give you a couple of tips of what that might look like. And number 2, pay off all debt except the house using the debt snowball. I'll come to that in a minute. All right, we're going to wind this up. I want to just quickly drill into those first 2 baby steps. So you're in debt because you've already been in the habit of spending more than you earn. And to get out of debt, you've actually got to get in the position of spending less than you earn and creating a bit of margin. Well, that's going to take a plan. Or if you want, a budget. And I know not everyone likes the B word, but a budget is simply a way of you telling your money where to go. And some people say, well, I just find budgets limiting. Yeah, budgets are limiting. They'll limit your chances of getting a call from a debt collector. A budget will limit your chances of making impulse buying decisions and getting further into debt. Budget says no. A budget will limit the likelihood of you lying awake at night worrying about how you're going to just keep the treadmill spinning and not get thrown off the back. So you're going to have to create some margin in order to achieve baby step 1 of having $1,000 in an emergency fund. And that fund is simply, when something breaks, you've got some money set aside to pay it. Great. So that's going to require probably, or almost certainly, playing better defense, spending less, looking for ways to save, to trim, to pull back, potentially playing better offense, getting a little side hustle. I talked about my parents last week as being relatively low income earners, and there's been seasons in their life where, like, my dad took a second job. My mum almost always had a side hustle going, doing people's ironing. Okay, put Netflix on and just do other people's ironing. Get paid for watching Netflix. She taught herself cake decorating. These days, there's plenty of gig economy kind of things that you can jump in and out of. That's worth looking. That's about playing better offense. And look, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, steps 1 and 2. But I am saying it is possible. It might take longer than you'd hoped. Might be harder than you expected. But it's better than riding the financial roller coaster of stress and worry. Making forward progress can be challenging, but riding the financial roller coaster of stress and worry is also challenging. And so choose your challenging. Which challenging do you want to lean into and ultimately have something to show for it? So final thought is this. Baby step number 2, Dave Ramsey refers to the debt snowball. And you can go on his website. It'll tell you all about it, how to set that up and how to execute that. And again, that is a strategy that we learned from him and we use and recommend, and it has helped a growing number of our people to get out of debt and start making progress into caught up and ultimately ahead. And we would love to hear that that's been your journey as well in the weeks and months and ultimately years to come. So next week, I'm going to talk about building up savings, which I understand if you're at baby step number 1 and 2, next week's not going to be for you, but come back and be a part of that because it's going to give you something aspirational to look forward to set your course towards. In the meantime, here's a couple of our incredible team members who have been on this journey, and there's a slice of their story, which we actually filmed a year ago. And they've made more progress since then, but this is still a great example of what it looks like to put the old godly ways into place and get the results that God promises.
In 2008, Reese and I met working for Bunnings, we, as couples do, start to know each other a bit more, and at some point we spent money. We spent lots of money. We decided to take a trip to the US, and that cost money. Decided to buy a new computer system, and that cost money. So at the end of it, we amassed a pretty large amount of personal debt, but that's normal for our society to be in that level of debt, to pay for something with credit and pay it back later, because you're always gonna worry about it later. And I just always remember it being a huge weight on the shoulders. Like whatever we did, it stopped us from doing things because we always had to make sure there was enough money for this debt payment.
It's immensely frustrating to work hours and hours every week and to think that so little this is actually going to be mine. This is all going to someone else.
Just before we got married, we made the decision with a conversation that we had with Mark about finance and giving and generosity and just taking those first steps. And he challenged us with the word, saying it's the one spot that God actually challenges us is to test him on this and see if he doesn't open up the floodgates of heaven.
That's where it sort of really grabbed my attention. The Bible's full of space saying, God saying, don't test me. And there's one bit where God says, do test me. And thought, we'll give it a go.
Yeah, so despite the fact that we were still in massive debt, we decided to take that step and we started giving our first 10%.
Yeah, on paper, it made no sense. We didn't have the money to give the first 10%. But go with God sort of favoured us very shortly afterwards. Do you want to go on?
So I was speaking to a family member. I told her that we'd decided and made the decision to start giving. And she then, out of the blue, said, look, I've got some money sitting in my account that I don't need yet. It's just doing nothing. So she offered to pay out our personal debt. And we made an agreement after much deliberation. It took me 3 days.
3 solid days.
So I got back to her and we actually wrote up a contract with a minimum amount that we would pay back. And we proceeded to eliminate our debt without the interest payments on top of it. It's phenomenal to think of how much money she actually saved us. And
it made things a lot easier for us, but it was just phenomenal. What was the timing between when we started giving and when this happened?
It was a very short period of time.
3 months?
It was 3 months.
That's 3 months, yeah.
So we began the path of paying out money. We're living with some relatives here in Perth, and so relatively inexpensive rent, just living out of a sort of a master bedroom out of a house. So starting to pay out that debt, and we decided to take it a step further. So we made the decision to give up our rental home, and we spent nearly 2 years living out of suitcases, going from place to place, house sitting houses and pets for people in the local Perth area. And
it came with a share of sacrifices. It's like we had to get rid of and sell or just give away most of what we owned. But it was with an end in sight, and it was exciting and fun as well to move every couple of weeks, and it was also frustrating and scary to move every couple of weeks. But it was a sacrifice. It was a sacrifice made with an end in mind.
It had a purpose, and the purpose was to get debt free.
It took us weeks to really sink in that we no longer had that weight pressing down on us,
and it was massive.
Yeah.
When you sort of think about people who have been in prison for a time, it really felt like a weight was lifted, but it took a little while to get used to it.
We went on a holiday back to the East Coast where both our families are, and at the beginning for January 2020, and the whole time we were over there, I felt I was getting a nudge from God, and Jess said much the same thing, saying, you need to stop doing this now. You're out of debt.
Yeah.
You need to stop doing this and find a place.
Yeah.
And
we did one last sit.
We did one last sit
in February.
And we found a place, and bang on the heels of finding a place, COVID hit. And if we hadn't have found a place, we would have been either homeless or living off the generosity of our friends. So Jess also got that nudge from God. And
solid nudge. It was crazy.
It was a solid determination. You need to stop doing this now. We did indulge in a few simple luxuries. The first thing we did once we moved into a real house was bought a toasted sandwich machine. And that was important. We've been wanting one of those for a long time. It's the little things you don't appreciate. But a lot of our success and our support when we were house sitting comes down to the family we've made to Elevate. We could not have done it without the help of several people at Elevate. Our whole Elevate family just rallied around us and supported us because they wanted to see us debt free. These guys were also debt free or working on debt free, and we're all sort of pulling together, support each other, and that's a huge part of the Elevate family for me.
And we're here telling our story and putting out the call. Do it. You have so much support around you, and you have God's favor. He doesn't want you to be in debt. He doesn't want you to be under the burden of that level of, for lack of a better phrase, slavery.
Because the weight of that debt is crushing and it's debilitating, and it's really hard to see a way out. But it is worth working through, and even though it would seem contrary to the way we were taught, the way it started was with giving. The more we gave, the more we've received, and that's not why we did it. We did it as admittedly to test God and to honour Him. But that's where it started.